Hi guys, I am so excited to do this tutorial. I've wanted to do this for a long time, and that is because white balance is the number one most important factor in any edit. Doesn't matter what presets you use, doesn't matter if you're editing by hand. White balance is far and away the most important temp and tint, the most important sliders in Lightroom. And I'm going to show you why, but far and away the most important, followed by, I would say, exposure is the second most important. But if you are not using white balance, the temp and tint sliders, there's no way your work is as good as it could be. And it's so simple. It's taken me a long time to figure out how to do a tutorial for white balance because it is so simple. So kind of keep that in mind as we go along. It should be simple. If this seems like, wow, that's too simple, it is. So let that be encouraging that it is a very simple concept. But I want to start here just giving you a really brief sort of scientific overview of what it is, because we might have to talk about a little bit of this in the video. So basically what white balance is matching your Kelvin, which is your temp slider, matching your Kelvin to the scenario of light that you shot in. So, here, okay, say we're shooting in midday sun. Our corresponding color temperature, Kelvin, or our temp slider would be 6,000 to make the whites white, okay? So this is where it gets a little, maybe slightly confusing. Technical perfect white balance is when your whites are white, like this background. Like that's what perfect white balance technically is. But what I want to teach you is how to use white balance in a more artistic way, which doesn't always correspond exactly with this graph or whatever. So you can see though that, okay, back here we have sunrise. That's a very warm situation. Like, when you're out at sunrise, everything looks warm and lovely. So in order to get whites to look pure white in a sunset situation, your Kelvin would have to be down around 2000. Now imagine that. If you know anything about the temp slider, you know that most photos are going to be somewhere between like 5,500 and maybe 9,000. 2000 on a sunset photo is going to look like crap. It's going to look terrible. Like, yes, your whites might look pure white, but that's where we get into the artistic, factor that you don't always want to follow this. But that's just an overview of like kind of what, white balance is and where it originated. And, when you hear people talk about Kelvin, it's just the number that corresponds with the light that you shot in. So let's get out of here and go back to Lightroom. Okay, future Rachel here, realizing that I missed a huge thing when I first recorded this. The basic concept of white balance, because it's so simple that I forgot to explain it. The basic concept is that you're trying to neutralize any color casts in your image. So let's just forget about presets for now, right? And say we just want to neutralize the color casts in this image. What color cast do you see? You're looking for blue, yellow, green, or pink. You're looking for one of those four colors. And sometimes it's really obvious like this is obviously, you can see blue, I hope. Sometimes it's a lot more subtle and you just have to sort of play with your sliders to see what looks best. And, don't be afraid to do that. If you're not sure, pull temp up, pull it back down until you go, oh yeah, that looks right. So I just wanted to explain that real quick. If you're an absolute 100% white balance beginner, the idea is to neutralize any color casts in your image. So let's say we pull our exposure up here. We want to neutralize that blue. All we do is pull our temp up until we don't see predominantly blue anymore. And oopsie, we're just working on temp right now. Pulling that up, and a lot of times when you pull temp up, you'll start to see hidden green and pink underneath. And here in this case, I think I see a little bit of green, so I would push my pink up, or push my tint towards pink, away from green. So that's really the very, very basics that I forgot to add in the first video, which is why I'm adding it here. Anytime I'm moving temp up, it's because I see some cool or blue in the image. Anytime I move tint up, it's because I see some green. Anytime I move tint down, it's because I see pink. Anytime I move temp down, it's because I see orange, or sometimes you can read it as yellow or red, just any very warm color. So I hope that helps. And so I want to teach you, there's 3 different ways to white balance. So we can do it by hand and by eye, and that's my preferred method. Or we can do it with, there are white balance presets. So if you come up here by your temp and tint sliders, you've got as shot, which is what it defaults to. Then we have auto, which is what, Lightroom will try to figure it out and set it for you. And then we have all of these, preset white balances that you can try if you get stuck and you're really not sure about something, say, and your photo is overcast or cloudy, then you can try the cloudy, white balance setting. I would try to stay away from the presets just because you're going to be shocked by how simple it is to white balance by hand once you get the gist of it. And I have a giant Bernese Mountain Dog pawing at me right now, so I'm going to pause for just a second and I will come right back. Okay, so the second way is these presets you can try if you get stuck. And then the third way is going to be a little eyedropper right here. You will need a white spot or like an area of white in your photo to be able to use the eyedropper. But essentially you click it to grab it, you hover over a white area. Here, we'll just show you right now. Click there and look at that. Just totally, it's a little too warm, which is why I don't necessarily love to rely on the eyedropper fully. You can use it to kind of get you close if you're stuck or you're not sure. Use the eyedropper, and then I would always adjust it by hand. So let's go back to where we were. And the other thing I want to point out is that it is incredibly important, if you're going to care about the way your photos look at all, which obviously you do because you're watching this, it's incredibly important that you calibrate your screen. It's like, if light is the most important thing in shooting and white balance is the most important thing in editing, the other most important thing in photography is calibrating your screen. So imagine a calibrated screen is like just a perfectly clear screen. It's like looking through glass. It doesn't have any smudges on it. It's just beautifully clear and perfect, right? An uncalibrated screen is like having, that colored saran wrap that's like pink and green? Imagine having that taped over your screen, right? So you're just not seeing the colors accurately, because having a piece of saran wrap over your screen doesn't change the actual images. It just changes the way you see the images. So if I had a pink piece of saran wrap on my screen, I'm going to be seeing it like that. And then what am I going to do to compensate? I'm going to pull that tint way back down. And to you, it's going to look great because you've got that pink saran wrap on, so that's probably going to look right. But to your clients, it's going to look terrible when they print or even probably on their phones. So actually, you know what? Let me just do something here, because that's how important this is that I'm going to do this real quick. Let's go back to Safari. Let's type in eBay, and we're going to type in screen calibrator. Here we go. Obviously, I've looked lately because I need to calibrate my PC and I need a new one. So they don't last, I would say they last maybe 2 or 3 years before they start just going wonky and not working. But you can find them for really cheap. Like, look, $100, $7, $9, $20. You could pick any one of these and have a perfectly calibrated screen. So they're not complicated. They come with great instructions. You hook this up to your screen and just follow the instructions. It's so worth it. Please do this. It's so worth it. Okay, so I hope I've convinced you to calibrate. But yeah, then after that, we've got the 3 ways to white balance. How important is white balance? It's everything. It controls the entire tonality of your photo. Let's just start editing this photo and I will show you. This is by Nicole Brummett, beautiful photo. Just needs a little white balancing. So what I would always do first before scrolling over the presets to try to pick one is adjust your exposure, because that's going to help you see the presets more accurately. And the second thing I would do is adjust your white balance. If you can tell, if you can't, it's okay. But if you can tell that your white balance is incredibly off like this, just pull up your temp until it starts to look like, alive. And I'm going to put that back to where it was because I was showing calibration there. But the other thing I want to show you here is, like, I had this down here to demonstrate. If I want to get it back to where it was, like straight out of the camera, I just double click that little slider thingy. And there we go. So that looks good. I mean, it looks way better than that, but we will apply our preset and then we will adjust after we apply the preset, because presets have color grading, right? That's going to interact with your white balance. Because if white balance is controlling the entire tonality of your photo, you have to assume that when you put other colors into that scenario, you're going to get some different results depending on which preset you use. So it's very important that you tweak it. I tweak it the very first thing and the very last thing before I decide I'm done with the photo. So, and sometimes I tweak it in between as I'm going. So that's how important it is. I probably use everything else maybe like, 20% of the time. And 80% of the time I'm in Lightroom, I'm just adjusting white balance. That's how important it is. The other thing I wanted to say before we get too far into this is it's okay if it doesn't fully make sense to you at first. Just the fact that you are here listening to this is major. It's going to make a huge difference in your work. Huge, I promise you. Just watching it, even if you don't think you're grasping or something's not making sense, it's okay. You can watch it a couple times or whatever, but this just takes practice. It just takes doing it. Like, I think that watching somebody, I've got 28 photos down here. Watching me white balance these is going to help you immensely just to see somebody else do it. But also practicing is going to make the biggest difference. And don't get discouraged. You can always erase what you've done. Nothing is permanent in Lightroom. Don't be afraid to play. But I promise you, if you want to go on to be a professional, or maybe you already are a professional and you feel like this, white balance is not one of your strong suits, just keep thinking about it and practicing, and I promise you it's going to get better sooner than you think. So I wanted to just point that out before we get going, because I don't want anybody to get frustrated and feel like they can't do it, because you absolutely can. You're an artist. You have good sense of color. I know that you do because you're in photography, and you can trust your eyeballs. I promise you, you can trust them. So don't get discouraged. That's just what I'm hopeful that people don't get discouraged. But let's just go ahead and start with the edits. So like I said, first we're going to just adjust our exposure a little bit, adjust our temp and tint so that it looks, quote unquote normal. Tint, the other thing I want to say before we really get started, tint I don't mess with quite as often as white balance or temp. Temp is what I'm going to adjust most of the time. And look at the scales that they're on. So temp is on a scale of thousands, right? And tint is on a scale of, I think it goes up to 100 or 150. 150 goes down to 150. But temp goes all the way up to 50,000 and down to 2,000. So what does that tell us? It tells us that tint is a much more powerful slider. So if I move tint up by 10, you're getting a whole lot more pink in there. If I move temp up by 10. Can I even do it? Because it's so, yeah, I can't even do it. It's just, it's like I could move temp up by 1,000 and it's still not going to make a huge difference. So kind of keep that in mind too. But let's see. I know I want to use 09 on this photo. And again, I'm going to come back and adjust my, now obviously I had moved that just for the sake of showing something, but I want to fix my exposure first with the preset on it. You'll also find that the presets sometimes will make things slightly darker or slightly lighter. So you always want to work with exposure to, in conjunction with the preset to get the exposure right. So let's go back down, and I like it right about there. And again, I'm just trusting my eyeballs. I'm going to pull shadows up just a little bit. Another thing I think is kind of fun to point out is the histogram. If you're familiar with it, great, skip ahead. But if you're not familiar with it, this is showing you all of the portions of your photo, right? So at the very left here, we have, this signifies our blacks. And then the next one over, I don't know if you can see on a screen recording, but there's this little gray box. Like you see all the different gray boxes as I scroll along. The second one here is shadows. This one is midtones. This one is highlights. And this one is whites. So ideally, I like, and I think most people probably like, for their histogram to be somewhat balanced. Have some whites, some black, good midtones. So as I'm editing sometimes, I will just go along and kind of watch my histogram and see how what I'm doing balances things out. Like, for example, right now I'm just lifting my whites up a little bit. And I like what that's doing. It's giving it just a little bit more pop. And then let's see what happens when I lift my shadows. Yeah, I don't want to lift them up too high. I don't like lifting shadows, to be honest. I feel like it gives a weird HDR effect that I don't like. What I do like doing is bringing clarity down. That just really softens your midtones. It takes out some of the sharp edges. I just think it's really pretty, especially if you're using a mirrorless camera. It just kind of brings it back down to DSLR, baseline, So yeah, that's that. So let's just see what would happen if we click the alternate white balance preset. And this is a stackable preset, so you can click any preset and then add this one on top of it. Yeah, I don't really like that. I think that made it too cool and maybe a little bit too green. So I am going to just click back to what I did on a Mac, it's Command Z. And I think on a PC, it's Control Z. So don't ever be afraid to just experiment and change things, because you've always got Command or Control Z to just go right back to where you were. So, so I would not use the alternate white balance preset on this. Let's just see what some of these presets do. There's daylight, that looks terrible. Cloudy, that looks a little less terrible. This would probably be considered shade. And that's looking better. But these presets will always have your tint at 10. And sometimes that's just not right. Sometimes I want, you want your tint up a little bit higher. Like here, I like it around between 15 and 17. And the other thing is there is no perfect white balance, okay? Perfect white balance depends on you, the artist. That's what I was saying with our little graph earlier. It's one thing to go by the scientific method and say, okay, when I'm in the sunlight, my temperature should be 6,000 because that's what perfect white balance is. No, don't do that. Go by what you think looks good. And that's also how you develop sort of a signature style, is trusting your instincts and going with what you think looks good instead of following, somebody else's method or following the scientific method. Do what you think looks good as an artist. Like for me, for example, I like a warm photo. So I would bump that temp up a little more because I like a warm photo. You might like a cool photo. So you can bump it back down to start to, get some cool tones in there. But yeah, please don't be afraid to play and develop your own
sense of style when it comes to warmth and coolness, because that can really help set your work apart. If your clients know to expect warm photos from you, that right there, that alone is going to give you some cohesion in your portfolio just by using either cool or warm tones. And how do we control that? The temp slider. So yeah, super, super important. All right, let's move on to our next photo, which is still Nicole, I believe. Yep. This is lovely. I'm going to give it a little bit of exposure. And let's use, I like 11. And I'm just going to use the PNW pack for the sake of ease on these, because it's such a versatile, pack that it's just easier. Lift my shadows a little bit. And I honestly like the white balance right there as it is. And that's interesting because we are in sort of a daylight setting, and look at our temp is 6,000. So in this case, the graph was pretty accurate. But yeah, all I did was lift temp up. Why can't I say temp and tint? Temp up a little bit. And then sometimes if I'm not sure, if I don't think tint needs to move, I will take note of what it was just in my mind, and I will start just moving it up and down a little bit, because sometimes you don't know until you see it, Sometimes as you're moving it up and down, you're like, oh yeah, that looks way better. So you kind of have to do that. And I think I like it. I like it at 6. And what was it at? Oops, that's not right. If I double click it, was it at 21? Was it really? Let me see. It was at 21. I didn't think it was that high. Okay, that is a little high for me, so I would bring it down to, right about 9. Yep, that's what I would do with that one. And let's go to our next one. I think this is also by Nicole Brummett. Yep, and then for indoor photos, what you want to do if you're shooting indoors is turn off all the artificial lights. You just want to use natural light, because natural light is going to have one white balance and artificial light is going to have another white balance. So when you have two competing white balances in a photo, it's going to make it difficult to white balance. And you can always use your brushes to change the white balance in a certain area of the photo, but who wants to do that? Not me. Okay, so let's go use our exposure just to expose this little. And then I'm just going to use PNW 12 for the most part, because it's, this is not just a plain edit with me video where I want to get creative. I just want to, pretty much show you the white balance. So, okay, now that I've clicked the preset, I think I want to go up on exposure just a little bit more. And let's go to single view here. That's looking pretty good. Now, as you go along and as you keep practicing, you will start to see color in places that you didn't see it before. Like, I'm seeing just the tiniest bit of green in the couch. And could it be because the couch is green? I don't know. But my instinct is to lift tint a little bit and see what happens. Yeah, and I end up liking it right there around 20. The only thing I'm not liking in this photo right now is how orangey Mom is looking. And that is because, let's go back to the original. She is in some deep shadows there. And this is why photographers always say light is everything, because it truly is. Look at Dad. Dad has more of a natural light cast on his face, and he's got a good skin tone here, right? Look at the difference, pretty good. But Mom is in these shadows. She's looking away from any light source. She's looking down. She's looking into her child. So her skin is going to pick up, shadows are always orange. They always are, orange or red. So I would watch out for that in your photos. And then look at his face. He's got a little bit more natural light coming in there, and his skin tone's good. So what I would do in that case, I'm going to lift shadows just a little bit, is I would grab I would grab a radial gradient, and I would use Magic Orange Skin Eraser, and I would just pop that right over her, and I would use the amount slider to dial that in until I liked it. Yep, and I like that right about there. And my instinct is always to go up a little higher on temp because I like a warm photo, and that is what, kind of what my clients expect from me. And you'll develop the same thing as you keep going and as you keep practicing. You'll develop tendencies with your white balance that's going to give your work a very cohesive feel. And there's no way that you're not going to. It's just the natural progression of things. As you practice, you start to develop your own sort of methods and tastes, and that really does translate over to your portfolio. So, yeah, have faith. It's all going to work out. Our next photo is by Michonne Hebert, I think. I could be saying that wrong. I'm so sorry if I am. Michonne. I had to ask how to pronounce her first name, and I'm just guessing on the last. So if I mispronounce your names, you guys, I'm really sorry. I know I don't want to do that. Okay, so first I'm just going to straighten this a little because my perfectionist tendencies will yell at me if I don't. You know what I mean? Is anybody a perfectionist? And you know what I mean when you, there's a crooked photo and you just, your brain is screaming and you have to fix it before you can move on. That's how I was feeling. All right, I'm going to give it a little bit of exposure. And right now, I think the white balance looks fine to me, so I'm going to adjust it after I apply a preset. Apply 12. And 12 does a little bit of muting action. So a lot of times after I apply 12, I'll lift exposure just a touch. And now, to me, this is looking cool. How can I tell? And like I said, you will develop this ability if you don't have it already, just to look at a photo and kind of go, nope, that's too cool for me, or nope, that's too pink for me. You will develop it, I promise you. So like I said, just watching this tutorial is the first step. Watching how somebody else manipulates white balance and what it does. But yeah, see, that's all it took, was just a teeny tiny, little bump in temp, and that's perfect. Now I would, again, just go up and down on tint just a touch to see what I like. And I think I liked it up a little. Yeah, I like it up right about there. Also, you guys, I always wonder about screen recordings. On my phone, they don't show super accurately. If I watch them on my computer, they're great. But if you're watching this and something is feeling off, it's just this screen recording. I don't know how to get around that. Maybe try watching on your computer if it's off, I guess. I don't know. It's very frustrating. Excuse me. It's allergy season, guys. I'm dying. Okay, so let's see before and after. Yep, just gave it a little bit of life. The other thing I always do is before I decide that I'm done with a photo, I'll click over to the before and after view, and sometimes that will even make me go, oh, I want it a little bit warmer. Like it just did with this photo. I looked at the before and I thought that could go warmer. And there we go. I think that's perfect. And all right, let's see. Our next photo is by whom? Marissa Glazer. And the next two photos are by Marissa. So here's a good one. We've got indoor light. We've got some neon lights back here. And we have a very tan lady who is partially in the shadows. So this could be difficult. But let's go ahead and do our exposure first. Okay, and then I'm going to do 12. And again, I always do this. I always bump exposure up a little bit more after I apply 12. And that doesn't mean you have to. You might like a more muted photo. And it's looking just slightly cool to me overall. So I'm going to bump temp up a little bit. And now I think that she's starting to look a little bit orange. So what can I do about that? I could go down to HSL and just drop orange a little bit. And I think that did it for me. Or, let me go back. If I didn't want to use the HSL panel, I could again grab a radial. I'm going to draw it right over her. And my favorite brush for this is Magic Orange. And boom, yeah, I actually like that better than the orange slider. Sometimes when you decrease oranges, it will start to take temp or like warmth out of the rest of your photo, which isn't really what I'm going for. So normally I do just like to use a radial in terms of fixing skin tones. But see, when we bring that back down, she's looking really orangey, and we bring it up and she looks perfect. So yeah, if you compare the before and after, you can see that her skin tone looks fantastic. So, and then after you've fixed the skin tone with a radial, you have a little bit more leeway to give it even more warmth if you want. Okay, so I like that right there. And our next photo is also from Marissa. I love this. This is such a beautiful photo. So let's give it a little bit of exposure. And I think I want to use 09 on this. Gorgeous. I already love it. And yeah, I think her white balance was really good here, actually. I don't think I would change it. It looks to me a little teeny tiny bit pink. So I would maybe take the tint down just a touch. There, I've brought it down by 5. And I love that. The other thing is I'm looking at my histogram and thinking, what would it look like if I put some whites in it? See that? See how my histogram just expanded? And then I'm going to compensate so it doesn't go too bright, I'm going to pull my exposure back down a little. Looks like she's shot this on a Sony. So I'm going to bring the clarity down a little. Again, that just softens our mirrorless files and texture just a little bit. And I think that's perfect. That's gorgeous. Did I change temp at all on this one? I'm just double clicking to see. No, we didn't change temp at all. So that's another good point. You don't always have to change temp. If you think the photo looks great as is, don't change it. You don't have to. I would say though, probably like 90% of the time you'll want to change it. All right, who do we have next? Next here we have, this is Alexis Adkins. And the next 2 photos are Alexis's. Okay, so let's start with exposure. Love this photo, by the way. Do I want to do 12 or, yeah, let's do 12. So after I applied the preset, I could see some greens coming through. Can you guys see that? Do you see what I'm seeing? Like in her hair. Okay, so this shadow in her hair, it's green and it's blue. So that's telling me that I need temp to come up to counteract the blue. And maybe I need tint to come up just a couple notches, up to say 17. Yep, that's beautiful. And then again, what I would do for Dad, since his face is mostly in the shadows, and he appears to just have a ruddier skin tone, that doesn't always translate real nicely to photos. I would do Magic Orange, and look at that. That really, see if you bring it down. It's just such a natural change, but it just makes such a big difference. So now that I've done that, I'm going to revisit temp and tint. I'm going to bump it up just a little more. And yeah, I love that just like that. I might bring shadows up just a touch. Maybe highlights down. Yeah, very pretty. What was I just going to say? I had something in mind that I was going to say. Oh, I don't remember. That's okay. We'll just move on to the next one and I will remember eventually. Next one, again, yes, is Alexis Adkins. Love this photo. This is such a good photo. I would do anything to have this photo of my family when we had a little guy. I never did photos like this. Imagine that as a photographer. Okay, I'm going to do 12 on it. That's beautiful already. Actually, like 11 on it. I think even better. That gives like a nice creamy glow to it. And because this is killing me, oh no, this is one of those where you'll never get everything straight. Let me show you actually just while we're here what I would do for that. So come to the transform tab and just, I haven't done this so I don't know what it's going to look like, but just click auto, and yeah, that straightened it out pretty well. So that's where I would leave that. I like that. Let's just go in and look at their skin tones and see what I want to go before and after. Pretty good, maybe a little warm. I feel like maybe the boy's hair is a little warm especially. So what would I do for that? Take my radial, pop it around, put on magic orange, and yeah, there we go. That's absolutely perfect. Love that. So yeah, did we change the, no, see, we didn't change the temp or tint at all on this photo, and it just happened to come out perfectly. So again, you know, don't think you always have to change it, because you don't. I would say most of the time you do. We just happen to run into a couple that didn't. You could even bump temp up just a little bit if you're a warmth lover like me. But look you can see that Alexis had the lights off, which was the perfect choice. Had she had them on, we would have been competing with, do we want a white balance for the natural light that's here, or do we want a white balance for the artificial light that's shining on them, which will make a difference. Okay, who is next? Then we have Shanann Anderson. This is such a pretty photo. Absolutely love it. The exposure to me looks fine here. I'm not sure about white balance yet. Nothing is really jumping out at me. So let's apply 12. And let's see. Lift temp just a little bit. Now this is a tricky one because already in the raw photo, their skin tone is already looking a little bit pinky orange. So obviously when you apply a preset and apply warmth, that's going to get even worse. So what would I do here? I don't want to have to use magic orange on the whole thing. So I would come down to saturation, my orange saturation, and just pull that down a little bit. Yep. Then I would give it a little more temp because I can get away with it after pulling orange down. And I'm looking at my histogram, and as you can see, there's a huge spike here in the whites, but that's probably the sky. But I do feel like that's falling a little bit flat overall, so I would pull the whites up just a little bit. I would pull my highlights down to make sure they're not too crazy. And then I would go back and play with my exposure. Exposure does so much. It mutes your colors when it's down. It pops your colors when it's up. It just does so much. I think the other thing I'm seeing in this photo is a little bit of pink that I don't like. So let me pull that down a little. And yeah, right there. That's how I like it. That's very pretty. Such a good photo. Who is that again? Shanann Anderson. Such a good photo. Let's see. Our next one is is it Charnay or Sharnia Thomas. Sorry, I don't I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm so sorry. Love this photo. So cute. And is that a castle back there? Looks like it. I want to be here. Okay, so the exposure looks pretty good to me. White balance, I know I'm gonna want some warmth. So let's just do it. Let's just give it a touch of warmth because I know I'm gonna want that. And we'll go to 12. I love how 12 mutes the greens and just gives these like sagey greens. I would go up on exposure a little. Then I would really put that temp in there. And let's see. Maybe give it some whites, give it some pop. And then you can see up here we have hardly any shadows or blacks. So I'm going to pull some back in. And then maybe push my shadows up a little. Yep, I like that, just like that. That's beautiful. And let's see, our next one is Charnay or Charnaya too. Okay, another indoor photo. let's give it a little exposure. Then I'm going to apply 12 just for the sake of ease. And again, that made it a little darker than I want it. So I'm going to go up again on exposure. And overall, to me, it's looking a little cool, right? So I know I want to lift temp to counteract that coolness. And I also don't want to just totally skip over like our eyedropper and our presets. So this would be, what would it be? Fluorescent maybe? No. Flash. Flash actually looks okay on that. Tungsten is no. Shade. Cloudy. Daylight. Don't hesitate to just scroll through these, because you can always go right back to as shot and have it where you were in the beginning. So just don't be afraid to play around with those presets, because sometimes they nail it, you know. And if you're brand new to white balance, excuse me guys, and you feel like you need some help, there's your help right there. Try every one of those. If none of those are working, try your eyedropper. Let's just try it on a white. Another thing is, when I'm using the eyedropper, I try to stay away from shadowy whites, because shadows are naturally like bluer and will make things, actually it depends. Sometimes shadows are much warmer, like especially on skin, and sometimes shadows are bluer. It just depends. There's people that would disagree with that, but that's what I've seen. So let's see. No, that doesn't do it for me. So what are we left with? We're left with doing it by hand, which is fine. We can do it. So I'm going to go up on temp. It's looking a little pink to me. So I'm going to go down on tint. And yeah, I think that's looking perfect color-wise. I would lift our shadows just a little, because the people are quite shadowy. And to finish, see how in the raw they're already looking quite saturated, with sort of a ruddy skin tone. And then I don't think there's any flash or anything on them to light them up. So you're going to have that shadowy saturated skin. You're going to have it turn kind of orangey in the edit. So again, I would just take my magic orange. Yeah, that looks way better. There we go. That would be a finished photo for me. I might actually pull the whites up a little bit. And how did I know that I wanted to pull the whites up? I'm just looking up here. That we don't, now we have a little bit of white in there. Yeah, looks great. Okay, perfect. And let's see, okay, this is Alexis Bronze. Girl, you are so talented. I adore your work. I literally adore it. Yeah, this one's hers. This one's hers. I just love your work. You are so talented. Okay, so let me start. But I almost don't even want to edit her work because it's so good. Okay. I'm scared. Don't judge me. I'm just kidding. All right, exposure. I'm going to use 00 on this baby. I always like to pull 00 down a little bit. It just gives like a nice soft rendering. I'm going to come up on our temp. I'm going to come down on our tint because I want to keep some of those sort of filmier tones in there. And then again, if you look at the raw, we can see that because of the sunlight, the skin was already quite saturated in the raw edit. I think it actually looks much better here, but I think it still could use a little bit of desaturation. So I'm going to pull that orange down just a little bit. And that's looking pretty good. Give it a little more temp. I don't want to push the temp up so far, like watch this, that it ruins the blues. You know, I don't want to do that. So here I'm just doing Command Z to go back where I wanted. Pull it up a little more. And yeah, that's beautiful. The other thing I would do that I'm seeing is up here, it's looking a little bit unnaturally dark to me. So I would just give that a little bit of exposure up there. And as a final finishing touch, I would put some grain on it. And these are the grain settings I like, you guys, like amount down near 30 and then size up somewhere above 50. And let me scroll in so you can see, or zoom in. See how it just gives that sort of almost like a magazine quality, like almost like a paper texture. Do you know what I mean? So that's where I like my grain settings. I don't know why I haven't enlarged this whole time. Enter full screen. Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Alexis, for letting us use these. Here's another one I absolutely love. I'm gonna put this on single view here. And go up on our exposure. I gotta know where you got that cool little camcorder or whatever it is. Just put it in the comments, or like, I don't know, DM me, because I want one of those just for display even. Okay, there's PNW 12. Again, I'm going up a little more on exposure. I'll go down on the highlights just a touch. I'm going to go up on the blacks just a touch. And then I'm seeing quite a bit of green, so I'm going to push my tint up just barely. What did we start out at? 22? Let's just try 23. And then we'll go up on our warmth. Up on temp here. Love that. I think I need a little bit more exposure. Yeah, there we go. Oh, look at that. That's so pretty. I love it. Oh, Alexis, you are so talented. Let's do one more of Alexis's just because they're fun to edit. Push our exposure up here. Look at the moon back there. So good. Let's go with 12 for this one. I'm going to up my shadows a little bit. Go up just a little bit more in exposure. And then, again, because this skin is so underexposed, and you can kind of see in the raw photo, it's already looking quite reddish orangish. So it just goes to, like, go figure, it's going to look kind of like that in the edit too. So what I'm going to try first is lowering tint to see if I can get rid of some of that pinkish tone in their skin. And I'm liking how that looks overall, going down on tint. I'm going to go up on temp just a little more, and then I'm going to correct it with HSL. Okay, let's go down to HSL. Here's my orange saturation down. And I think I might even give it a little luminance just to pop out their, yeah, there we go. Just to pop out their skin tones. The other thing that I want to just show you that you can do, let me zoom in here. What I would like is for their skin to look a little bit less red, but I don't want to have to keep pumping tint down. So I'm going to go to hue, my orange hue, and I'm going to slide my orange hue over to the right until I like their, yeah, that's it. That is perfect. Love that. I might give it a little more temp. And this is honest to God how I edit. Like, I did go through these once just really quickly before starting the tutorial, so I didn't waste too much time. But this is honest to God how I edit. I just go back and forth, tweak a little bit of tint here, a little bit of temp there, exposure here, exposure there. Yeah, so, okay, that's finished. That's beautiful. And again, let's just see if we use the white or the eyedropper, how that would affect it. That looks good too, especially if you like a cooler edit. That looks good. I would encourage you to, if you do have white in your photo, use the eyedropper just to see. You can always click back to where you were if you don't like it. You can always use, use your custom presets too, or they're not custom, they're just white balance presets. That one looks good. Shade. Tungsten and fluorescent are never going to look good. Flash is a little bit of a cooler edit. Daylight, yeah. So let's go. See, even when I do that, I can just go back through and find my original white balance that I liked. Okay, gorgeous. Love that. Now, who is next? This is... who do we have? Is it Curry? Shasan? Again, I'm so sorry if I'm not seeing your... Oh, I already did that one because I had to edit it for the thumbnail. Yeah, I hope it's Curry Sashan, but please correct me if I'm wrong. This is gorgeous. This is such a great example of white balance being everything. Like, look at if we just put PNW 12 on it, that does not look good at all, right? Let's reset it. I'm going to give it a little, exposure. And right off the bat, I can see that there's too much blue in this image. How can I tell? I'm just looking at it and seeing the blue. Like, yeah, you're going to see when we adjust it how blue that really was. Look at that. Not even a preset on it yet. Just that temp slider. Oh, I'm sorry. There is a preset on it. Whoops. But yeah, look at what the temp slider did, you guys. It's crazy. No, there is no preset on it. I was not wrong. Okay, there's 12. Let's go up on exposure a little bit. Isn't that crazy though? Just what the temp slider does? It's like magic. And I really, really hope that if anyone has been struggling with white balance, they can leave this video and go to edit their own photos and just have the confidence to play. You know, you don't have to know everything about everything just to experiment. And experimenting and like getting your hands dirty, so to speak, is really what's going to make the biggest difference for your white balance career, I promise you. So yeah, that's that. That was just a couple of clicks and it's gorgeous. I love it. Okay, who is next? Oh, the next 3 actually are Curries. This is also just so beautiful. And this is one that a lot of people were saying they have a hard time white balancing when everything is green. And we just have to do, what's the opposite of green? Pink. And we can see that here. Here's our tint slider. Here's green. Here's the opposite, pink. So we're going to use tint to counteract some of that. But first I'm just going to fix our exposure. PNW 12 is always my go-to when there's a lot of green. Again, we haven't adjusted white balance and that looks pretty terrible. And that's just how it is. So let's adjust our white balance. It was looking very cool to me, so I'm bumping up temp. And it is looking quite green, and partially not just because of the green grass, but because the green grass is reflecting onto everything. So you've got green undertones everywhere. So how do we fix that? We just pull up our tint. Check that out. Again, I don't know how well this is going to translate on a screen recording if you're watching on a phone. If you switch to PC or a laptop, it will be much easier to see. But yeah, isn't that pretty? And all it took was bumping up temp and tint and just clicking a preset. That's it. So good. Okay, here's our next one. This is another indoor photo, which I think is just really good to get a feel for and watch somebody else white balance. I am feeling like this is a little bit pink right off the bat, but I'm not sure enough to go messing with my tint right away. I probably would want to give it some temp, but this is one I'm just not sure. Until I see a preset on it, I'm not sure how I want it to look. Let's go with 12 again. Up. Okay, just because I'm a warm editor, I am going to go up on temp. And now I'm seeing even more of that pink. So I'm going to pull that pink down, pull the tint down. And as I'm pulling it down, I've got my eyes focused on the photo. Okay, so I'm not paying attention to the number at all. I'm just paying attention to the photo. That looks pretty perfect there. The one last thing I would do here, I would actually probably give it some whites and maybe drop my blacks a touch. But the last thing I would do is, I don't like totally color corrected babies because I like them to look kind of authentic, you know what I mean? But there's a lot of red here, and partially is because the shadow, and she's closer to Dad's hand on that end. So again, I'm going to take a radial, just adjust that for, adjust that for her little face there on the bottom, and use Magic Orange. Magic Orange is in the original pack. Yeah, there's only 5 brushes in that pack, but Magic Orange is worth the whole thing, I promise you. So good. Okay, yeah, that looks great. I think I might go a little further up on temp. And that's it. That looks amazing. Okay, good deal. And then this last one is also by Curry. Okay, so let's go, let's go up on our exposure a bit. And I think I wanted to use 09 on this. I'm going to give it some temp. I would say 99.9% of the time I'm going up on temp. Unless it's indoor and really dark and underexposed, that's the only time I can think of actually going down on temp. But yeah, 99% of the time I go up. I'm seeing a little bit too much green, and part of that is just because, like I said, the whole photo is green, but it's also reflecting. So I'll go up on tint a little bit, and I like that right there. Histogram looks lovely. Yeah, that's a really cool shot. Okay, what do we have next? We've got Parker Sayers, the next two. This is such a cool photo. I love it. Like, I can't tell if this was from a shoot or just a candid moment of, is it her? Is it somebody she knows? It's just such a neat picture. Very unstaged appearing. Okay, so I've just lifted my exposure. I'm going to use 12. And this is another one where we started out with very dark, very saturated skin in the raw. So what I might end up doing is going down. Actually, that looks pretty great, just like that. And that's, again, as shot, white balance. It's looking just a touch pink to me. I can see just the tiniest bit of pink back here. And again, you guys will get that. You'll get that eventually as you keep practicing. Your eyes will start to pick out those small undertones too. But in the meantime, just go up and down on temp and tint a little bit until your eyes like what you see. And I did want to go down on tint just a touch there. I don't want to lose the moody feeling of this photo, but I do want to make sure that you can see her features. So when that happens, I would just use a radial and just give a touch more exposure like that. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Great photo, Parker. And then I think this one's from Parker as well. This is such a great photo too. Let's go up on exposure. And let's pick, I already know I'm going to want warmth in this, but I want to show you the dramatic transition that this makes. There's 12. Now watch this. This is so cool. Look at that. Boom. That's just, I just love it. It's like magic. Oh, I love it. Tint looks good to me there. And what I would want in this photo is a little bit of pop. So I would go in with a brush. I've got my size up there. Always keep your brush density at 50 so that you can use the amount slider and never go over the strength that they were made to do. And then I would use maybe Give Me a Glow. Yeah, that's perfect right there. And then I'll show you what that did. See, it just gave it a little bit of pop. Love that. That's such a good photo, Parker. Such a good photo. And look at, let's go back to as shot white balance. Can you even, like, I know there are some people out there that would just leave that like that because they're not accustomed to, you know, picking out tones in an image. And what a shame, because all it takes is, look at, that's literally, guys, all it took. Just a little temp up. And that's it. It just, it is really truly that simple. And the reason I'm not going back and forth with the presets and the eyedropper very often is because here in the tutorial very often is because I don't want you to rely on those, but let's just see. Again, you can see in this sheet back here, we have one part that's pretty shadowy and one part that's not. So I would choose the not shadowy part. And that actually looks great too. That's just a tad warmer than I would do myself. But yeah, and it looks fantastic. Okay, who's next? We have Celeste Melinda. Where are we? Oh, right here. This is a tricky one. Whew, we've got underexposure. We've got tons and tons of reflections from all of these leaves, which is really tricky. And we've got people wearing dark clothing, which can reflect onto skin. Yeah, this is a tricky one. So we're just going to go up on exposure quite a bit. And then let's try 12. Now this is one of those 1 in a million times that I would go down on temp because it's just way too warm. It's also looking a little bit too pink to me. But I'm going to go down on my temp. Look, that's already looking so much better. And I'm going to try going down on tint just a touch. And again, I'm focusing on the photo, not the number. And that just went down just a touch too much. So then I'm looking at the number. And I'm looking at the number going, okay, 8 is a little bit too much. So let me go back to say 10 and see how that is. That's much better. Okay. Yeah, this is one of those photos where you just kind of have to be okay with it not looking like a, sunset photo somewhere. The other thing I would do is I would take this lady in the middle who looks a little bit more tan than everybody. And just so that her skin tone doesn't stand out too much, I would use Magic Orange and just dial that back a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And as I'm looking at it, I think I pulled tint down a little bit too much. Where did we start? We started at 18, maybe 16. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, I mean, look at the before and after. Like, made a huge difference thanks to white balance because that's really all I did. So, okay. Celeste is our next photo too. Look at this neon green grass. Whew. I love the picture though. This is so cute. So let's put 12 on it. See how 12 just, boom, like instantly those greens are sagey and lovely. I'm getting some cool vibes like from his hair. I'm getting it like from back here. I'm getting it. So I am going to lift temp just a little bit. Yep. And then I would just go in with a brush over their skin tones because there are some there's some pink reflecting off of his shirt onto their skin. And I might actually use Audio's Flaming Skin here, which is for red skin. It looks much better. And I would pull the exposure down on that brush just a touch. Yep, that looks great. That was a real quick, nice edit. And our last photo here is Lauren West. And this is also a gorgeous little photo. Let's see, let's go up on our exposure. Put 12 on it. And that's looking just a touch cool to me. So I'm going to go up on temp. And then as you can see in the raw, their skin is quite shadowed and looking quite saturated already, which is because of the shadows. So what I would do is, let me pull up the shadows just a little bit. That's looking great. I would probably go in and use the Magic Orange Eraser. I don't want to do too much of that because we still have a couple to go. And there's one other thing that I want to show you. Let's see, I might give that a little contrast. and maybe a little bit of whites. Bring my clarity down, and that's beautiful. I would leave it right there. Okay, so I want to show you how to deal with when we've got sunset orange on people's skin, and then in the background we've got some shadowy, like more blue toned. So we've got two whole different tones here. We've got the sunset hitting them, and then the sunset is not quite strong enough to get that background yet. So this is kind of a doozy. This is my photo. Kind of a doozy to edit. So let's pick 12. I'm going to straighten it out a little, crop it in a little, because I'm crazy. And where to even start? I almost don't even want to push temp up because I know it's going to start making their skin look wild, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then I'm going straight down to saturation and pulling some of that out of their skin there. Now I feel like that's a little too pink also, so I'm going to pull my tint down. Again, just staring at the photo while I pull it down. Looks good. I'm going to give myself a little bit more temp. Again, partially just because my clients expect warm photos from me. And then what I'm going to do is see how this skin here is the most shadowy in the photo. Just so that doesn't draw any attention away from what I'm really wanting the attention, which is their faces. I'm going to use Magic Orange. Just lighten that up just a touch. And I always use the amount slider after I apply a brush. Yeah, that looks good. I love this photo. I remember it being very hard to edit when I was editing it for the bride and groom. I think the other thing I would probably do is take some, I like that blue back there, so I want to just punch that saturation up just a little bit. And I also feel like their skin is a little bit too pink, so let's go to our hue, because I already pulled tint down and that wasn't quite enough. So I'm going to go to our hue and pull that over. Yeah, that's better. The other thing I'm not loving, and I'll tell you why, because their faces are very well lit by the sun. I mean, granted, it's oranger, like more orangey sun than I would want, but they're very well lit. Back here is not that well lit. So let me show you what I would do. I would select the background, and I would give that a little pop back there. Let's try giving a glow. Yeah, see how that brightened that up like a ton? Then I would come and pull my highlights down, give it just a touch of exposure and temp. Then I would give it some grain and done. That was a doozy of an edit. But see, we did it. See that? Their skin looks better. I would also go in and resaturate her bouquet just a little bit, but that looks much better than the raw. And the other thing I want to show you is a sunset photo here. This is mine also. The thing with sunsets, or I'm sorry, not sunsets, backlighting, which you can tell here the light is behind them, is that they're always going to require temp. It doesn't matter if you're a warm editor or a cool editor. If you have backlighting on somebody, please, 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 please pull the temp up. Otherwise their skin looks blue, which looks horrible. I'm going to use 9. See? Why does it do that? I don't know, but the skin always gets this weird bluish tone when it's backlighting. So watch this. Watch the magic happen. Boom, that's all it took. I'm going to take the tint down a little bit. And yeah, that's it. Now it looks great. Just a little temp and tint, guys. That's really all it is. It's crazy, isn't it? The other thing I wanted to show you, if you are really stuck on an image and you just don't know, you don't have a good reference point for what white balance should be. I'm going to go back to this one. Actually, no, I'm going to do this first. You can pick any photo on the internet, and you're not using it for anything other than your own use, own private use. pick any photo you admire on the internet. I just picked a random one. This is from a company called Reverie Oak. Make this a reference photo, okay? And then you're going to stick it next to the photo that you're having trouble with. So let me show you how to do that. I'm just going to click right on the photo and click set as a reference photo, okay? Now we've got our reference photo set. Let's go back to the one that's similar. And I'm going to write down here on the left is an R and an A. This is the reference photo and the actual photo, or whatever. I don't know what the A stands for. But click that. Now see, we can adjust our tones based on the photo that we love. Now look how obvious it is at this point that the photo that we quote unquote love, I just picked one quickly, has more pink in it. Can you see the difference? Now we can take our edit and, oh, look at that. Just pulling up pink just a little bit actually did quite a good thing for that photo. It's also a little bit darker than our photo. And this photo has a little bit stronger blacks. So we can go down to our black slider and pull that down a little bit. Maybe we want to open the shadows a little bit now that we're looking at it side by side. Don't hesitate to use a reference photo from anywhere on the internet to help you balance your own tones. It's not a shady, creepy thing to do. You're going to delete it after you're done with it. You're not passing it off as your own. You know, you're just using it as inspiration for your own photo. So don't hesitate to do that. I'm going to show you one more of my own that is a very difficult photo. I do love this photo, and I know, oh, I want to get rid of that reference photo. Let me just go side by side. I know that the bride ended up loving this finished photo because they printed it, and she does look absolutely gorgeous, but this was a real bummer to edit. I'm going to use 10. And I don't even dare pull the temp up right now because look at their skin. And that was because the sunset was right over here, right where she's looking. She's looking straight into the sunset. And we were on a hill, so I couldn't just turn around. Because we wanted to get the ski lift in the background, so I had no choice but to do it this way, which is okay. I mean, I would have preferred to have her face away from the sunset and just expose her with a reflector, but it didn't work out that way, so now we just have to work with what we have. So I'm coming straight down to saturation and desaturating that skin. And I also can see that her skin is looking a little bit too pink to me. And again, that's just, I can see that because I've been doing this for years and years. You guys will eventually see that too. Just practice, and I promise you will see it. And in the meantime, just share your work in the group and I'll help you. If I think that your skin is too pink, I'll tell you if you ask for it. All right, so I'm going to take our orange hue and I'm going to lift that over towards yellow. Look at, there we go. That's so much better. Whew. Yeah, I would crop that in a little bit. And of course this isn't, I did quite a bit more to it for her actual bridal photo, but I'll pull my temp up just a little bit. And man, that's gorgeous. Yep, love it. So I think that's actually it. We went over the 3 different ways to white balance. We can do it by hand and by eye. We can do it by eyedropper, which isn't always accurate. You always have to go back and tweak a little bit after you use the eyedropper. You can use the white balance presets, or you can use a reference photo and just try to match it up. So those are the ways, and you now know that it's the most important thing in Lightroom. If you don't do anything else, if somebody asked me, okay, you can only have one thing in Lightroom for the rest of your life, it wouldn't be a preset, it wouldn't be exposure, it wouldn't be anything other than white balance. I would pick white balance so quick their head would spin. I'd be like, temp and tint. I mean, that's just, it controls the whole tonality of the photo. It really is everything. So I think that's it. before I sign off, is there anything else I wanted to say? I don't think so. Please let me know if this has helped you. I have a bit of imposter syndrome when it comes to teaching. I don't think that I'm a great teacher by any means, but I have a passion for it. Like, I just really want to help with the knowledge that I have. If I can give it, I would like to give it, but I don't think that necessarily makes me a great teacher. So if you guys did learn something from this, it means so much to me to hear. Like the video, subscribe. I'm going to have a lot more time now that I'm not doing weddings to do free education. So also, you can, in the Facebook group, you can say, make a post and tell me what kind of tutorial you would like to see. What are you struggling with? I'll be happy to make whatever you want. I have 24 years of experience now with Photoshop and Lightroom. And yeah, it's always been a passion of mine. So I do enjoy sharing the knowledge with others. So I'm going to get this uploaded so you guys can actually watch it. So thank you so much, guys, for following along and for watching this far into the video. I truly appreciate and love you all. And that's it. Okay, bye.